Today's training is going to cover how to turn a Google Slides presentation that you've already got set up and ready and make that into something that you can use in Nearpod. So this is the tutorial if you haven't clicked that link to open it yet, but all of the steps that we'll go through today are linked here. If you go into your Drive and you open up a Google Slides presentation, doesn't matter what it is, you just need to open it up. And I'm going to use this one because it's the one I've been looking at today. The first thing you want to make sure is number one, that you have a Nearpod account. So if you've never used Nearpod and you've never created an account, you're just going to go to nearpod.com and you're going to click this sign up for free button. And then once you get into the teacher sign up, you're going to click your sign up with Google button and then make sure you select your teacher Rala 31 account. That is going to initially bring you into a free Nearpod account. Now, through our district, we do pay for Nearpod licenses for the premium license. So if you do not have an existing Nearpod account or a license through the district, please email me and I will get you added to a license so that you can have all of the premium features that come with the licenses we have, because we have plenty of those for people to use and try out. But you do need to go in and create the free account first. That way, when I send you the invitation, it'll just allow you to upgrade when you go in through the link. Okay, so then once you're into Nearpod, you have the account. Now, the next thing you need is to make sure you have the Nearpod add-on. When I'm in my Google Slides presentation, if I go right up here to this extensions button, and I look down in this list, if I don't see Nearpod, then I don't have that add-on already installed on my account. To get that, if you click on the link in the tutorial, it'll show you. If you need to install it because you don't see it in this list, you're going to hover over this add-ons area and you're going to click Get Add-ons, and then you're going to search for Nearpod, find it in the Google Workspace store, and then you're going to install that. And then once it's installed, you'll be able to come in here, go to extensions, and you'll see Nearpod right here. Okay, once you have an account with Nearpod and once you have the add-on installed with Google Slides, now you are ready to be able to open a Google Slides presentation, open the Nearpod add-on within your Google Slides window, and make changes to your slides the way you would want to. Now, what I will say to that is once you start adding Nearpod interactive elements into your Google Slides, you cannot actually modify those slides. Now, I can still come in and I can make changes to my text that's on a normal Google slide. But if I try to insert an activity, for example, if I go to extensions, I open Nearpod. The first time you open this, it will ask you to log in and to provide permissions to your Google account. So you'll click sign in with Google. Again, as long as you have your account, you'll just select that account and then it will load the Nearpod menu over here. Once you have done this, you're able to start editing as you would in Nearpod. We are going to choose the slide that we want to edit. What I want to have is a slide that I'm going to turn into an activity for my students. This is what you want the menu to look like. These are the different types of interactive activities. So if you open Nearpod and it's saying stuff like teacher resources or district library, go ahead and close it out using the X right up here and then just go back up to extensions and reopen it, and you should be able to see the different types of activities. So there are lots of different activities. There's actually a page on Nearpod that shows you what each of those activities will do, how they work, how to set them up, and I will show you that page in a few minutes. I'm going to just show a couple of the commonly used activities that are inserted into lessons, and then we can talk through the other types. So this right here, where I would want students to answer this question on this page so that answers are popping up in front of the class, is called a collaborate board. So I'm going to go right over here and I'm going to say collaborate board. And then it allows me to set up what I would want that slide to look like for my students. So I can make it look like a bulletin board. I can just have a blank white screen, blackboard. So they've got lots of different options for backgrounds. Collaborate board topic. If I just wanted it to be what is artificial intelligence? What are its benefits? What are its drawbacks? Okay. So what is AI? What are its benefits? Drawbacks. Okay. So those are just the prompts that are going to pop up for my students. I have some different options here if I just want their answers to pop up in a grid. So I'll get a block of a student answer and the next one, that's grid. Or I can set it up in columns. So if there were categories that I wanted students to answer, like on this one, I could say AI definition. And then the next one, I might put benefits. Drawbacks. Okay, so then that allows them to categorize their responses, and then everything would be aligned to what I would go over with them. Under student options, I can turn on or off a few things that might make this a little bit more classroom friendly. If I don't want my students to be able to see one another's names, I'm going to leave this off. If I want to turn on student names, I'll turn it on. Can students edit responses? That's totally up to you if you want them to be able to get back in and edit responses to something they've posted. Do I want to have to approve student posts? This is handy if you have maybe some students who start posting things inappropriately and you need to monitor that. Do you want students to be able to make comments on other posts? If I had a student post an AI definition and then I wanted students to follow up with something that adds to their definition, or maybe I want them to ask a question on one of the drawbacks that they posted, I could leave this comments on and then it can continue the conversation. And again, I can turn on to approve student comments if I need to monitor that. You can turn any of those off or on. And then I can also choose the type of media that I want students to be able to post with their response on this board. So it's really similar to Padlet. If you've ever used that, students can go find pictures, video clips, they can record an audio clip right into the board, they can find GIFs, and then of course they're going to have an option right here in this text box to enter text, so they can do any combination of those to post into this board that the class will see. Okay, so when I have everything set up the way I want it, I actually want to delete that, but I don't know if I can drag that. That's all right. So I'm going to click save. And you'll see that once this creates my interactive slide, I can't really see anything from Google Slides as far as what this will look like for students or even look like for me. It just tells me that this slide is a collaborate board that I have inserted right here. If I need to go in and edit something that I've done on that slide, I'm just going to click to any of those slides, any of the interactive slides I've added, and click edit this slide, and it's going to give me that editing window again. So I can change anything that I want as far as the settings, the prompt, the way it's set up, if I don't want it to be in columns or whatever. So I'm going to switch it to a grid and just let it be, what is AI, what are its benefits, what are its drawbacks, and save that again. When I actually present this to students, which I will show you in a few minutes, this is the interactive slide right there. All right, so this one is one that's definitely commonly used. Another one that's commonly used is called a draw it slide. You can take any slide that you've started and you can make it a draw it slide. So you'll see when I click on a slide, let's say I want this one to be a draw it slide. I have obviously these options where they become a different type of interactive slide and it actually inserts it. But if I say convert to draw it on this slide, it's actually going to make this particular slide one that students can draw directly onto. So I'm going to say convert to draw it. It's going to make me authorize again. And now this is a draw it slide. If I say edit this slide, okay, you can add a question to the slide. Obviously on this one, I already have a question here, so I don't really need an additional one. As far as instructions are concerned, this is something where you could just give a verbal prompt to your students, but if you wanted to have a question that was added to the top of the slide, you could. And then when students get to this, they're going to have all of these different annotation options right down here to utilize when they work on this slide. So let's say I get to this slide and it says, have you ever heard about artificial intelligence or AI? And I tell students, okay, what I want you to do is either draw or find a picture that represents something that you have seen related to AI. They could use any of these tools right down here. They could go find a picture. They've got some shapes. They have the option to add video and GIFs. And then, of course, if they want to erase anything they've done, they can do that. Yes, Becky, you should be seeing me. My screen. So once I have all of that added, I'm going to click save. And then that one's ready to go as well. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the tutorial really quickly. That's how you get in and edit your interactive slides. I just showed you how to make a draw it slide. That's how to use them with students, which we'll get into in just a second. But I do want to show you how and where you can access some of the other options for creating interactives. So on page 6, I've got a link right here that says check out this resource page from Nearpod. If you have this up, go ahead and click on that because it's going to take you to one of Nearpod's posts that has all of those different interactive elements that you saw in your Nearpod menu. And then when you get here, it goes through all of the different types of options that you can put into lessons. So media options, I can create different types of media in my slides. As far as interactive elements, I can add in videos. I can actually add a web content media slide that opens a web viewer inside my Nearpod lesson. They have BBC videos as an option, some 3D objects. FET option simulations. One of my favorite ones is the VR field trip, because you can insert a virtual reality field trip where students can click and travel to different places within this virtual reality for whatever field trip you select. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to pretend that I find it. Want to do a field trip. Okay. And then you can search for different destinations. You can look down through here and see what they have available, what might work with what you're covering. I am just going to choose. This looks good on this very cold day. We're going to go to Greece. So it's going to bring that virtual reality field trip in. Again, you can't really see a whole lot as far as what the students are going to see here. I don't think, yeah, it just lets you move the interactive around on the slide. But when you go in to preview it from Nearpod, you'll be able to see it, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so let's say I've added my interactive elements. Like I said, there's lots of different activities that you can add. I didn't even go into the majority of these, but like on this one, so wherever you click on this resource page, it'll take you to a new page that elaborates on that type of interactive element. So if I wanted to do a time to climb, these are really cool. They're basically like relay games or formative assessment games, and similar to what you would have in like Kahoot or quizzes, but it's all built into Nearpod. So if I click on time to climb, it's going to take me to a page that talks about what time to climb is. And you get to choose the theme that you want for your game. The students get to choose their character when they come into the game. And then once you've built the game, you can add text, images, and then of course you add your different answer options. And as students answer, there's going to be a leaderboard, and it's also going to show them climbing up this little mountain as they answer questions. And then at the end of it, they'll get to see the results for who won your game. There are some ways to convert quizzes that you've already built into Nearpod. You can make that into a time to climb. Otherwise, you can just copy and paste questions and answers in. You will note there's a whole section here about how to mute the music in time to climb. It's a little bit annoying when you have 20 computers in your room playing. You can actually go into the settings for the game and say, I don't want to play sound on all student devices. I want that turned off. Just so that you don't have to hear different levels of music on 20 different devices. Okay, so that's the benefit of this page. I would keep this handy as you are trying to figure out what kind of interactive element do I want to use in this lesson, what's going to work the best. There are a ton of options. You can do a poll. You can have an open-ended question that students answer. They have some manipulatives where if you're doing math, you can have students drag and drop things where you need to. Different types of games and quizzes. Lots of different things that you can put in here. That page will help you figure out what resources you want and what you can do with those. I'm going to pretend I have added all of the activities to this slideshow that I plan to use as interactives for my class. And I'm going to come right over here and say, save and go to Nearpod. So this is going to save everything I've added to this Google Slides, and it's going to bring this presentation or lesson into my Nearpod library. And you do have to actually bring it into your Nearpod library before you can assign it or share it with students. So you'll see it'll tell you that it's saving and in the process. So basically it's bringing all of your slides in as images, unless they are one of your Nearpod interactive elements. Okay. And then once it's in Nearpod, it's just going to sit here as as a lesson. What I will say for those of you who teach older students and you have multiple classes, if I use this same lesson and I assign that to all of my students, all of the student data will be stored in this one lesson, which might be okay for some of you. For me, when I used this, I wanted my students to be broken out by class so that when I went into each of these lessons and I tried to pull their data or their scores, I was only looking at one class at a time. So if you prefer that, what I would say is I would duplicate this however many times you have a class that you're going to present it with. So I'm going to say duplicate. Okay, and so it opens it automatically in a Nearpod editing window. Really, all I need to do, because this lesson is ready, is I just want this to be my first hour version. Okay, and then I'm just going to click save and exit. And then I'm going to do that again, duplicate. And you'll see that I get a little warning that says duplicates of this lesson can only be edited in Nearpod. That's because you are making the duplication within Nearpod. You're not going to be able to come in here and edit these slides. The only place you can edit the slides is in your original Google Slides, and then you would have to bring it in as another new lesson. So that's one thing to remember with this Nearpod add-on, or really with any of the add-ons. Another presentation that we do is using Google Slides with Lumio, which is very similar to Nearpod. If you are going to use them together, you have to do all of your formatting and editing for your slides in Slides first, add your interactive elements, and then present it in whichever platform you're using, in this case, Nearpod. Okay, so I'm going to pretend this is my second hour copy. So I would make as many copies as I need. If you're at the middle school and you have 3 switch classes, make one for each of your switch classes and title them however you need to so you know what's what. And then once you have what you need, each of these, when I hover over, I've got 2 different options. I can either do live participation. That means when I click live, it's going to give me a code and students are going to join the lesson with me. My other option is student paste. To note, if you add a collaborate board in a lesson and then you try to make it student paste, it will give you this warning, because collaborate boards are obviously intended for the whole class to work on. If you're having students work on that outside of class time, you're not there to monitor what's being put on the board. If it's something you're going to make student paste, you probably wouldn't want a collaborate board in there anyway. But if you do, because maybe you just want them to all post in the same area so everyone can see everyone else's answers, you just go into settings and you can click this enable collaborate board, and that allows them to post on the collaborate board when they're in that student paste lesson. Okay. So you'll see there are some other lesson settings when you are setting up a lesson. If you want students' names to be auto-filled, you can turn that on. That does require them to sign in to their Google account, which I don't think is a bad thing. Then they can't be making up their names. And then if you want to require that students must respond and cannot skip activities within the Nearpod, I think that's a good idea so that you can make sure that they're doing all of the things. And then I'm going to go back to my lesson library, and I think that was the one I hit student paste on. Yes. Okay. So now that I turned on the option for the collaborate board to be set up with student paste, now I have the ability to kick off a student paste lesson. So you just saw me, I clicked start student paste. Now it tells me that this is my code for students to join that lesson. I can also just copy a link and paste it somewhere for them. Probably the option I would use is the Google Classroom option. And then I can automatically share this to whatever class. So I press that button on my first hour class. I would obviously want to post that in a first hour Google Classroom. I don't really have one of those. I'm going to pretend post this in my iTeach class. And then it asks me, what do you want to do with this? And I want to create an assignment. So I'm going to click go, and then it's going to give me all of the options for creating this assignment. So I'm going to say Nearpod lesson AI literacy. For all students in my iTeach class, please click the link to access and complete the Nearpod lesson. I would set up my due date. Let's pretend I think this is going to take students until Monday, and then I want it to be due by the end of class time. We'll pretend that is 8:51. I cannot remember when first hour ends. We're going to pretend it's 8:51. Okay, so then after I've done all of that, I'm going to click my assign button. And then it says you have posted to your class. And then I can actually view it so I can see what it looks like for students. Be under my classwork tab. And there it is right there. Okay. And then I can click and drag that to whatever topic I would want that under in my classroom. But for students, they'll click this. They'll select the link. And it's going to open this lesson. Okay, so because I didn't set it up so that students had to basically authenticate themselves with their Google account, it does allow them to type their name in here. Like I said, I would probably have it set so that they have to sign in. And then they're going to click join lesson. And in student paste mode, they can go through these however quickly or slowly they want to. But you'll see this third slide is where I had set up the collaborate board. So this is loading that interactive. Okay, so what is AI? What are its benefits? What are its drawbacks? Share your thought. Okay, so they would be able to post here. They would be able to go find a picture if they wanted to find something that represented AI. I think this is actually from the movie AI. iRobot, yes. Okay. They would have a post here. You can see my name is not showing for the board, and that's because the settings that I have on this are that students can't see one another's names, but you can set it up either way. I didn't turn off comments and I didn't turn off likes. So as other students come into this board and they are posting, they can comment on this or add likes. So you choose how that works best for you in your classroom. When I used it, I would sometimes leave comments on because I would want students to continue a discussion. So I'd have a requirement of a number of comments that they had to make, but I'd usually turned this option to like things off. All right, so they're going to continue going through the presentation, reading and doing the things. And then this slide is where we had set it up to draw something or annotate. So have you ever heard about artificial intelligence or AI? And I could have probably put a little bit more on here that basically said, draw your version of AI or insert a picture or something like that. But students can actually draw directly on the slide. They can highlight. They have a little eraser right here, or they can always come over here and say erase all. And that'll clear the page for them. They can just add a text box and type. And then, of course, they have shapes and they can add an image again. Okay. And they can annotate on this slide however they see fit to accomplish the task, depending on what the task is. If you want them to label a diagram, or maybe you have added a table of words on this slide and you want them to define the vocabulary term and then add an image that represents that term. There's lots of different ways that you can have students use this space, but it becomes basically their whiteboard. Okay, and then when they're done with any activity like this, they'll have a little submit button. And when we were looking at the settings earlier and it said, asked if students could edit responses, if you don't want them to be able to edit their responses and go back to that after they've turned it in, you want to make sure that you turn that off. Okay, so we've got more slides. And then we're going to come to the end. And this is where I put the virtual field trip in. So we are looking at Greece. Okay, they have the option to basically maneuver this. All right, enter VR. And as I move my mouse around, it actually looks like I'm wearing VR goggles. When I hit my escape key, it takes me back out of that. So they can really choose how they want to see it. On some of the VR field trips, there are actually points that you can click on throughout the image. And it'll take you further into the picture, kind of like Google Maps does. This one doesn't seem to have that, but anyway, it allows you to see a location more in depth. All right, and then that will end the lesson. So then they're finished. And as the teacher, all of your student work gets stored within that particular lesson. When I want to see how my students are doing, you saw when I clicked student paste, it said that it was going to start that from January 17th through February 16th. That is something important to note. Anytime you start a student paste lesson in Nearpod, it gives it a 1 month span of time for that to be active. And that way students can't just be clicking on the link and going in to see a lesson whenever. Now, live participation is very similar, except it's something that you're going to be doing with students in front of you. And it's important to note that I can do live participation and I can have a student paste link separate, so that, let's say, one day in class, I'm doing this with my students, but I have 2 students absent. I can go ahead after class that day and click this student paste option, and I can either send those two students the link to the lesson that we did, or I can even go into Google Classroom and assign it, but only to them. When you go into Google Classroom, and rather than selecting all students in your drop-down menu, just select the ones you want that to assign it to, and those are the only two students who will see that Nearpod lesson under classwork. Live participation, once you click that button, it's going to open the lesson. So from the teacher view, this is what I will see. This would obviously be on my projector. I would tell students to go to join.nearpod.com. They will enter this code, and then it will bring them into the lesson just like we saw with the student paste version. The only difference now is that students aren't going to be operating these slides. I will be the one doing that. So as I flip through slides in live mode, it will change on the student screens. When it's time for us to go into an activity, this is what will show on my screen. I have a few options on my activity pages. So if I want to change something quickly, like maybe I flip this down and I'm like, oh, I didn't set it so that students can edit their responses. I want to turn that on. I can do that on the fly. And then back here on the draw it slide, obviously this is where students can be marking on their board here. But when I flip into teacher mode, this allows me to mark on the draw it slide. I can add whatever I want here. I can do some instruction and then flip back over to student, and I'm going to be able to see what they're doing on their slide. Oh, and it's important to note that right down here, when students join a lesson, you'll see how many are joined with this little head icon and the number. Hide student names and answers if I just want those to be hidden across the board, no matter what we're looking at. All of it will be hidden on all activities, so that if I have this on my projector and I'm going through the activities, I don't have to accidentally flip to one and you can see student answers. And then let's say I get to slide 17, but we still have 4 more slides to go, but I want students to finish this. I can quickly say, okay, you guys are going to finish this as homework. I'm going to click turn on student paste, and it's going to allow them to move at their own pace starting from slide 17. So they'll be able to jump back into this lesson, and they'll have the link to do so when I say turn on. All right, so I'm going to jump out of this. You'll see if I jump out of a session that's existing, do you want to leave this session? You can resume it later, so it'll keep it as an active session. All right, so I was going to show you earlier, when you want to actually get in and see what your students have done, if maybe you gave them a quiz or a poll, or even like the draw it slide, and you want to see what are their responses. When I click the 3 dots on any of my lessons, my first hour, my second hour, depending on how you have that split up, I'm going to go right down here and click reports. And it'll give me post-session reports. Okay. Now this one, you can see that it shows 1 session. Okay. And it shows student paste. So this is from when I opened it from Google Classroom earlier and made a few changes. And so I can go in and click on that session. And if I've created an activity where there should be some data tied to it, I'm going to be able to see that in this report. So my student got 100% participation because they did something on the draw it slide. I didn't have anything else in there that was going to actually bring data like a quiz or a poll or something like that. But that's what it looks like. So if I had multiple types of activities, they would show across here, and it would show me, one, if they'd gotten participation, they'll get a little check mark. Two, if they have inserted a quiz, and let's say it was like 10 questions worth 100 points. If they got 8 of those right, it would show me an 80 out of 100, depending on what you put in there and what you make it worth. That's what the reports look like. And as I always say, one of the best parts about Nearpod, about Lumio, any of these platforms is it's not just something that you can bring your existing content into. They have a ton of content already built into their library. So if I go into Nearpod library, you'll see all sorts of different areas that I can browse content. I can search by a specific topic. I can search by grade level. They have several producers of content, not just Nearpod, but they partner with different organizations like FET, Vocabulary, things like that, where you have not just what Nearpod's built, but other companies have built content as well. So these are just a few as I'm scrolling through here that you can see. And if you see something you want to take a look at, you can just hover over it and click the preview button. And when it's in preview, it allows you to see basically what is built into that lesson. Then I can go to slide 2. Those are questions built into a video. Very similar to what you would do with Edpuzzle, but that's considered one of their lessons there. So they have a video with questions. I can jump back. If maybe you didn't want it just to be a video option, you can actually come over here and look at specifically activities. See what they have available there. These ones that say time to climb are going to be like the quiz games I explained earlier on that particular topic. And they've got drag and drop activities. If I want to only look at full lessons, I can do that. Needless to say, Nearpod has a lot of content that you can look through. You do want to make sure that you get the premium version of the account because that's how you get access to all of this content. And in order to do that, I have to add you to one of our licenses. As I said before, if you have created an account but you don't have access to premium because you've never been added to our school account, please send me an email if you want it. And I will add you so that you can have access to a license and you can get started with this. If you guys have anything you'd like to ask me, please feel free to come off of mute and I will answer your questions as I can.